Out beyond the edge of the mapped galaxy, where stars hung quiet and far apart, the mining world of Oradel 9 floated in darkness. The people there were not warriors. They were workers, scientists, engineers, sent to extract rare crystals from the planet's frozen core. For years, they lived under a sky that never changed. Listening to the hum of machines and the slow crack of the ice beneath them, it was a cold, quiet life. But all of that changed the night they heard the signal. It started as a whisper, a broken, looping distress call, garbled words, ancient code. The audio was full of static, buried beneath layers of radiation and interference. It came from somewhere deep in unclaimed space. Not a ship, not a station. Frequency was older than any they had on record. It sounded almost human, but distorted like something speaking through a dying throat. The message repeated every 40 seconds. This is Uniteco 1, requesting rescue, requesting. Then it broke, repeated, skipped, and crackled out again. The technicians on Oradel 9 froze when they heard it. They checked their records. No such unit existed, no log, no assignment. Nothing matched. The AI systems ran a deep search. Still nothing. It was as if the signal had come from a time before records existed. Curious and a little nervous, Chief Operator Mara Velen ordered the signal to be amplified. She wanted it sent through the deep range array, hoping a stronger broadcast might stabilize the message or trigger a response. She was a cautious woman, trained not to take risks. But there was something in that voice. Something broken, something lonely. She didn't think, just gave the order. That night, the stars changed. It began slowly. On the outer rim of the system, navigation satellites started misfiring. Asteroid. Scanners glitched, reporting phantom objects that vanished when scanned again. Deep sky telescopes picked up odd gravitational anomalies, something large. Possibly multiple objects entering the sector from deep space. But there were no energy signatures, no heat, no drive trails, just shadows. Then the shadows began to move. 6 hours after the signal was rebroadcast, all power in the communications tower dropped. Not surged, dropped. Completely. Backup systems failed to engage. No one could explain it. Emergency lighting flickered. Memory cores reset. Data backups were unreadable. It was as if the entire station had been wiped clean. Mara stared at the black monitors in silence, heart pounding. As a single message began to print itself letter by letter on every blank screen. You called us, we have heard. Correction will begin. No origin code. No encryption. Just those words. Then the sky above Oradel 9 cracked. They didn't hear engines. There was no light show. The stars simply moved. First one, then another, sliding in unnatural ways. Large black forms emerged, blocking constellations. Not glowing, not flashing, just appearing. They were not ships in the traditional sense. They had no visible thrusters, no ports, no insignias. Just dark, angular designs, impossibly smooth, impossibly still. Some hovered just above the upper atmosphere, casting long shadows across the frozen surface. Others remained high, silent sentinels in low orbit. Panic broke out in the colony. Workers ran, some screamed. Some simply dropped to their knees, unable to process what they were seeing. The air turned colder. Not from temperature, from fear. People felt it, instinctively. Like a predator had arrived that they couldn't fight or understand. The colony's leadership tried sending hails. No response. They tried emergency frequencies. Nothing. All outgoing signals failed. The black ships didn't fire. Didn't move. They just watched. Mara stood on the top platform of the control tower and stared up, her breath clouding in front of her as one of the massive vessels passed overhead without a sound. It was longer than a dreadnought, shaped like a spear. It cast no light but blocked the stars like a curtain pulled across the sky. And then the dreams began. At first, just a few miners reported them, streams of voices whispering in old human dialects, strange numbers repeating, memories of places. They'd never been Earth cities that no longer existed, wars that happened centuries ago. Then entire shifts of workers refused to sleep, terrified of what they'd see. One man carved a message into the wall before vanishing without a trace. They are not here to help, they're here to erase. On the 7th day, all AI cores on Oradell 9 shut down. Not crashed, refused to function. The machines that once guided drills and scanned for minerals began displaying unfamiliar code, symbols no one could translate. When one engineer tried to manually reboot the system, it fried his brain implant. He died with eyes wide open, his mouth whispering earthier a naval code that hadn't been used in 400 years. That was when they realized these weren't just ships. They were part of something greater, an old system, an ancient response. Something Earth had built before it disappeared. But Earth was gone, wasn't it? For centuries it had been silent. The last known Terran outposts had gone dark. The few humans who remained in the galaxy were scattered, broken, diluted into other empires. The idea of Earth had become more myth than memory. Most young species never even heard of it. Yet now, here it was, not in body, but in presence. Mara Velen, alone in the control room, stared into the sky and whispered to herself, "We just wanted help." Her voice shook. We didn't know who would answer. As if in reply, a new message printed itself across the screens. The same words on every display: request received. Humanity responds. System reset in progress. Then, above her, the stars began to blink out one by one. The stars were not gone. Not really. But above Oradell 9, the sky no longer looked like a sky. It was full of silent black shapes that moved without sound, blocked light without casting shadows, and hovered without visible motion. The colony's night cycle had been overwhelmed by their sheer presence. What had once been an empty orbit now looked like the edge of a wall, one built by something older than fear. The people didn't scream anymore. They didn't run. They simply stood still. Something deep inside them, older than instinct, had accepted a truth none of them could say aloud. Whatever had arrived was not here to negotiate. In the main tower, Chief Operator Mara Velen hadn't left her station in 2 days. She no longer trusted the colony's internal systems. The AI cores were dead, erased by unknown code. Screens occasionally flickered to life with brief cryptic texts before shutting off again. There was no warning, no pattern. Just fragments, like memory breach, original source identified, return sequence initialized. Mara's face was pale, her voice hoarse. Her last log entry was audio only. She didn't know if it would save or where it would go. Just spoke into the empty air. "This is Oradell 9 control, if anyone's listening. We didn't mean to trigger anything. We found a signal, an old one. We thought it was a distress call. We boosted it, that's all. But something's answering, and it's not like us. It's not like anything in our databases. It feels human, but wrong. It doesn't speak. It doesn't fire. It just watches. Please, someone tell me we didn't call the thing that built these." Half a system away, on a floating relay station, orbiting an abandoned moon, a lone scout, ship caught the edge of the growing silence. The pilot, Rivental, watched in horror as star maps began to rewrite themselves in real time. The Oradell sector flickered on his display, then turned gray. It's not red, not destroyed, unknown, central. "Command," he said, into the open. "Come, this is Scout Vessel 09 Theta. I'm seeing live map collapses. Oradell 9 is showing system drift and memory holes. This doesn't look like an attack, it looks like reality is folding. Please advise." But his signal bounced, not jammed, just unrecognized. The channel showed open, but no one heard him. It was as if Oradell and now Riven were outside of known space. When he tried to upload his flight path, the system denied him. His ship's AI, a basic voice named Kira, said softly, "Error. Target destination no longer valid. Please select an existing system." He stared at the screen. "I just came from there." But Kira didn't respond. Her voice stuttered. "You did not? Back on Oradell 9? Something had landed, or at least it seemed like it had. It didn't fall from the sky or open with noise. One moment the central courtyard of the colony was empty. The next, it held a black monolith tall, smooth, and perfectly still. It pulsed once every 3 seconds. Deep, silent waves, barely perceptible, but felt in the chest. No doors, no seams, just presence. No one touched it, not at first. But a boy named Levin, no older than 13, walked up to it without fear. His hand reached out, and before anyone could stop him, he pressed his fingers to its surface. For a moment, everything froze. And then he spoke, in perfect Terran code. Memory key confirmed. Correction sequence unlocked. Echo fleet active. The words weren't his. His mouth moved, but his eyes were blank. Then he collapsed, unconscious but breathing. The monolith began to sink into the ground. The moment it vanished beneath the ice, the orbiting ships moved for the first time since their arrival. Not toward the colony, not away, but through space, across sectors. Heading deeper into Council territory, and everywhere they passed, memory collapsed. In the galactic core, the Council convened in panic. Reports were flooding in. Planets were reporting memory loss. Languages were vanishing. Tech began malfunctioning. In strange ways, anything reverse-engineered from Terran origin stopped working. The oldest archives were blank. Even the AI advisors couldn't explain it. The name Earth began appearing again in corrupted messages. In ancient code even, in dreams. Some old diplomats cried when they heard it. One muttered, "It can't be. They were gone. We made sure." But they hadn't been gone. Earth had simply gone quiet, because Earth had learned that silence was safer than trust. The truth began to rise like an old ghost. Hundreds of years ago, Earth had reached out during a galactic war. It had shared science, shared AI, shared cures, and then it had been turned unused, betrayed, invaded. The galaxy had taken what it wanted, and Earth had disappeared. Now Earth had heard a signal, not from its own, but from a new generation, one that unknowingly used its old tech, spoke its old code, activated its old warnings, and Earth answered, not with diplomacy, not with war. With correction, Mara stood again at the top of the tower. Her eyes were bloodshot. She didn't blink as 3 more ships passed above, casting moving shadows. Her breath fogged the glass. She whispered more to herself than anyone. "They're not here to fight. They're not here to talk. They're here to fix the mistake we made by calling them." Behind her, a monitor flickered. One last message appeared. No sound, just black text on gray. "Your rescue has arrived. Step aside." In the heart of the galactic core, inside the Council's golden dome on Helier Prime, the air had grown thin. Not because of the atmosphere. Helier had some of the best biosystems in the galaxy, but because every leader present knew something was coming, and none of them could stop it. The central projection showed system after system blinking out, not in flames, not in war, but in data corruption. Sectors were marked unreachable. Starships vanished from tracking logs. Trade networks reported ghost signals. Whole planets no longer existed in their routing systems. It was as if memory itself was failing, but only in very specific places. "Is it a virus?" asked the matron of Rix, her long spines trembling. "No," growled General Octhel of the Krail Dominion. "Viruses corrupt. This deletes. Clean, precise, almost elegant, and still no attackers." The Varelian ambassador asked. A silence followed. Then the High Archivist of the Council, a frail human named Lauren Ash, stepped forward. Her voice barely a whisper. "I know what it is," she said. I prayed I would never see it again." They all turned. Lauren tapped her cane on the floor. "The Terran Echo Protocol." Several counselors gasped. Others blinked, confused. Scoffed. "That's a myth," he said. "A Cold War fairy tale. You humans made that up to scare the galaxy." Lauren stared at him with hollow eyes. "That's what you told yourselves after we went silent. After you took what you wanted and left Earth. To die? You told yourselves we were gone because the truth was worse." She stepped closer to the holodisplay. "You told yourselves we couldn't remember. But Earth remembers everything." In her private chamber, Lorraine accessed a hidden file stored in a crystal chip embedded in her canopiece of forbidden Terran tech, never shared with the Council. It held one program, a record from Earth's final days before isolation. It showed the launch of thousands of automated ships from hidden Terran vaults, each one carrying fragments of Earth's knowledge, AI, and pain. Not war fleets. Judgment fleets. They had no captains, no politics, no timelines. They waited silently for a call. Not a plea for help, a trigger. And now someone had triggered it. Meanwhile, the Terran fleet moved across systems like a shadow slipping under. Doors, it didn't use wormholes. It didn't need slip space. It moved through old paths routes the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. Some ships looked like black obelisks. Others like floating cities. They didn't communicate, didn't request clearance, didn't fire a shot. Where they passed, change followed. Starships lost entire logs of where they had been. Planetary networks reset, their languages scrambled. History archives blinked out mid-sentence. On the planet Caravan, a colony woke up and could no longer speak its own language. Children cried, parents panicked, and all written text turned into unknown symbols. Every piece of infrastructure based on old Terran tech failed. The people were left in silence. They hadn't been bombed. They had been forgotten. Rivental, the scout pilot, was still drifting in an empty system, desperately trying to navigate around the blackout zone. His ship's AI, Kira, continued to glitch, forgetting who he was. At one point she said, "Welcome aboard, Cadet Tall," as if they'd just met. He'd served on that ship for 10 years. He stared at her flickering icon. "Kira, what year is it?" She paused. "Year unknown." Calendar source deleted. His hands trembled. He switched the screen to manual star charts. But the stars were in the wrong places. Or maybe he was. On Aura Del 9, Maravellan watched the last of the black monoliths sink below the ice. The orbiting Terran ships had begun to pull away, moving on to the next system without a word, without destruction. But their presence lingered. People forgot their own birthdays. Entire family records were blank. Work logs no longer showed who built what or when. It wasn't terror. It was worse. It was rares. As if Earth had come not to kill but to take back everything it had ever touched. Every stolen line of code. Every copied AI system. Every planet where Terran blood had been spilled, and those who had used Earth's gifts and left it behind were now being unmade. Back on Helier Prime, Council panic turned to blame. The Varelians accused the Ricks accused the humans accused the Council itself. But none of it mattered. Lauren Ash knew the truth. She stood in the center of the chamber and spoke with clarity few had heard in decades. "You never destroyed Earth," she said. "You taught it to hide. You taught it to survive. And in its silence, it built something none of us could ever understand." She pointed to the latest report. 5 more systems lost. No war. No trace. Just silence. We didn't win the war. Back then, she whispered, Earth just stopped answering. Now it had started. They had no flags, no emblems, no names etched across their hulls. When the Terran fleet entered the Helios reached the inner path to the galactic core, they didn't announce their arrival. There were no warnings, no speeches, no ultimatums. They simply were there. Thousands of ships, blacker than space, moving in perfect silence. Their shape was unlike anything the Council had prepared. 4 smooth edges, vanishing seams, strange geometries that seemed to bend light and logic. No windows, no exhaust, no visible weapons. They floated like thoughts, calm, controlled, unstoppable. The Varelian defense grid detected them first, then failed to detect them at all. 1 second, there were alerts. Not jammed, not disabled. The satellites simply forgot the fleet existed. On Helier Prime, the capital planet of the Council, the sky turned dark in midday. People looked up and saw the Terran ships overhead silent still, forming a perfect circle above the Council dome. Children cried. Elders collapsed. Some recognized the ancient Terran shape, the spearhead design used during Earth's last war, centuries ago. But these were not old relics. They were alive with some kind of intelligence, quiet, watching, judging, and still. They didn't speak. The council scrambled. Starships were launched, but their AI refused to engage. Weapons went offline. Targeting systems couldn't lock. Commanders shouted at cold machines that stared back with lifeless optics in the main. Chamber panic became despair. "They're not here to fight," muttered High Archivist Lauren Ash. "They're here to collect." What followed wasn't war. It was a system update. Suddenly, on thousands of worlds across the galaxy, data began rewriting itself. Words in Terran-rooted languages began disappearing. Encryption keys turned to static. Galactic bank systems collapsed. As all currency linked to Earth origin algorithms reset to zero, entire histories vanished from libraries. AI models built from Earth's early blueprints shut down in perfect unison. In universities, students found their textbooks filled with blank pages on the knowledge world of Maranthus. A professor broke down sobbing as every historical file rewritten by Terran sources turned into a single line of code: revoke unauthorized access. The Resistance tried to act. Coalition of species gathered war fleets from sectors untouched by the Purge. They powered up their dreadnoughts. Hundreds of ships, thousands of pilots, ready to defend the galaxy from this strange Terran return. They reached the edge of the neutral zone. They fired on one of the silent black ships. The beams hit nothing. They passed through. Then forgot they had fired. One by one, the commanders turned to their crews in confusion. Why are we here? What are we pointing at? What mission? The war fleet drifted. Lost, silent. The entire log of the battle was erased as it happened. No damage. No deaths. No memory. In orbit of Helier Prime. The largest Terran ship, the one shaped like a disc split in half, finally emitted something. A sound, not a voice, not a message, just tone. A low, humming frequency that rang across the skies, vibrating through bones and metal alike. Every being on the planet felt it, not heard it, but felt it as if something was calling out to memory itself. That night, thousands across the galaxy began to dream. Dreams of Earth, dreams of blue oceans and cities in ruins, of fire raining from the sky, of betrayal, of silence. No one knew where these dreams came from, but they came, they stayed. A universal signal embedded in the Terran fleet, preceding collective recall reminding the galaxy of what had been done, of what had been taken, of why Earth had disappeared. The message was simple. It didn't speak in words, it burned through time. You remember? In the Council Dome, Lauren Ash stood before a dying projector. The star map was going dark. Sector by sector, Terran ships were erasing data not just from planets but from minds. "You see now?" she said quietly. Earth didn't need guns. It built something deeper, something crueler. The Rick's warlord growled. "They could kill us. Why don't they?" Loren's gaze didn't move. "Because death is not correction. Oblivion is." In a forgotten sector in an old archive vault, long sealed, a Terran AI reactivated. It had waited over 300 years. Inside it was the last Earth Codexa blueprint of everything Earth once shared with the galaxy. It pulsed once, then vanished. No detonation. No transport, just erasure. Its presence had been the key, the signal, the final confirmation. Earth's fleet had not come to conquer. It had come to finalize a process, to reclaim its shadow, and now the galaxy would feel what it meant to be erased from human memory. For weeks, the Terran fleet had drifted across the stars like a slow, black titan firing, unspeaking, unstoppable. Entire systems were wiped of memory without a single shot being fired. Not even warlords, pirates, or ancient civilizations dared to move against it. They saw what happened to those who did. Not death, not destruction, but disappearance. Perfect, surgical, quiet, and then, one day, the silence broke. It happened on a diplomatic relay moon called Heron's Restan, Old station orbiting a dead planet, long used for peaceful talks. Nearly abandoned now, it served as the emergency meeting place for what was left of the Galactic Council. The air inside was tense, heavy with the scent of desperation. Dozens of species sat in the cold chamber, watching a single black monitor at the center. The screen was blank, waiting, humming softly. Then, without warning, it came to life. A single face appeared, human, but not alive. Its skin was porcelain smooth. Its eyes glowed faint blue. Its voice was mechanical, emotionless, but not lifeless. Behind it, there was only darkness, and behind that, Stars the Terran AI spoke once. No name, no greeting, no threat. You cried for rescue. The room fell utterly silent. You cried for rescue, but you used what was not yours. Yes. You carried pieces of us in your ships, your machines, your minds. You altered our gifts. You betrayed our intent. You erased our name. We have come to correct your error. The screen blinked. The face was gone. No further message followed. That was all. That was enough. The very next day, thousands of systems experienced a total collapse of memory infrastructure. Navigation paths failed to render. AI cores no longer recognized their own creators. Colonial histories reset to unknown. Maps of the galaxy shrunk by 30%, deleting sectors that were previously active. Entire civilizations were left in stunned silence, unable to explain who they were or where they had come from. In some cases, the beings themselves forgot. Language drifted, script blurred. Voices faltered mid-sentence. Children forgot their parents. Machines forgot their users. Empires forgot their borders. It was not a weapon. It was precision forgetting applied, like a scalpel. Anything born of Terran design, DNA, or data was being pulled back. Not physically, but in time. On the planet Koresh, an ancient university founded on principles learned from old. Earth biology woke up to find its entire database now read only one sentence: unlicensed access to Terran origin sequence. Reset complete, no files, no archives, no way back. The university shut down. Scholars wept. Meanwhile, the human remnants scattered across the stars, the mixed blood. The forgotten colonies, the half-adopted races, began receiving encrypted dreams. Yes, dreams. Messages encoded in REM patterns, sent through the same low-frequency hum that echoed through the Terran fleet. They heard voices speaking Earth languages they never learned. They saw cities they had never visited. They felt rage. That wasn't theirs. In grief. Deep, buried grief. And in those dreams they heard it again. We were kind. You were cruel. We were silent. You were forgetful. We have returned, not to punish, but to remember. These dreamers woke changed. Some screamed, some fell silent forever. Few simply whispered. Over and over they were always listening. In the core, fear turned into superstition. People began erasing Terran code themselves out of panic. They deleted files, scrubbed AI logs, abandoned planets, hoping, praying, that by cutting the thread, they would be spared. It didn't work, because the Terran fleet didn't need revenge. It needed completion. Earth had written the rules long ago. The moment the distress signal was sent, those rules reawakened. And now, nothing could stop them. On Oradel 9, Mara Velen still lived. She stood at the edge of a frozen cliff, staring. Into the sky, only a few ships remained above watching. The monoliths had gone. The colony was quiet. Most of its people had forgotten why they were there. But Mara remembered. Not everything, just one thing. You cried for rescue. She whispered it to herself like a prayer, like a curse. The boy Levin, the one who first touched the monolith, sat beside her. He didn't speak much anymore, but now he looked up and asked softly, "Did we do something wrong?" Mara didn't answer, because she didn't know. In the void between galaxies, far beyond what the Council could see, the Terran fleets continued moving not toward war, not toward conquest, but toward correction. Their job wasn't to win. It was to remind the galaxy that Earth had once been here, and that Earth had never left. The galaxy was still spinning, suns still burning, ships still flying, but something fundamental had changed. There was no grand explosion, no declaration of war, just a quiet erasure. And it was spreading faster now. On star charts, systems simply disappeared. On language servers, entire dialects dropped without trace. Entire sectors once known for trade, culture, or war were now marked with a single symbol, a hollow circle -unmap. It started small. A ship couldn't find its home station. A trade route vanished. A moon colony couldn't connect with its parent planet. People assumed it was glitching or sabotage. But then, memory itself began to fail. Not like illness, like design. On Helier Prime, the center of the Galactic Council, emergency meetings no longer mattered. Diplomats who had spent lifetimes brokering peace now stood in silent confusion, unsure of their own names. Forgetting why they were even seated at the table, the great walls of the Grand Archive flickered, their inscriptions vanishing one line at a time. Stories turned to fragments, history's two blank slates. In the sky above them, the Terran fleet did not fire. It did not move. It simply remained present, like a memory that refused to fade, but didn't need to speak again. A final message blinked across every council console at once. You cannot remember what was never yours. And just like that, the council vanished from its own system map. In the farming sectors of the Rix Dominion, crops died overnight, not from disease, but from the shutdown of Terran-grown biotech that had long fueled their artificial seasons. Weather systems collapsed, atmospheric stabilizers blinked out. Generations raised in stable conditions now watched as storms returned and the planet shifted back to its natural wild state. The Rix people screamed at the skies, but no voice answered. They had forgotten why the sky once listened to them. In deep space, near the dying star Orin K, a small crew of historians aboard the research vessel Teller's Wake made one last attempt to document the change. They activated an isolated recording system not tied to any Terran tech. The captain, a four-armed Denari named V's, spoke calmly. We're losing history, not just from our files, but from ourselves. We are forgetting how we got here. We are forgetting what Earth gave us, and now I fear we will forget that Earth ever existed at all. His eyes narrowed, and that may be the point. The ship tried to transmit the message, but space returned silence. The signal didn't bounce. It just disappeared. On Aura Del 9, Maravellan and Levin watched as the final Terran ship rose quietly. From the frozen horizon, it didn't speed. It drifted, like a thought completing itself. The colony was nearly empty now. Some had vanished. Others remained lost in half-memories, unable to speak languages they once knew. Levin asked, Are they leaving? Mara answered slowly, No. I think we're the ones being left behind. She looked up one last time and whispered to the stars, Please, don't take everything. A cold wind blew. And above her a voice not heard but felt past. Through her bones, then do not forget again. And then nothing, the Terran fleet was gone. No explosion. No flash. Just absence. Across the galaxy, life continued. The wheels of commerce turned again. New names rose to power. Children were born without ever hearing the word Earth. But there were holes. Songs with missing verses. Maps with unmarked paths. Technologies that no longer made sense. It's monuments to unknown beings, and in certain dark corners of space. Old explorers sometimes found ruins, massive black towers shaped like blades, untouched by time, humming with impossible energy. No records remained of who built them. No language could decode the markings. Only a feeling lingered. Something once answered, and something was taken, but no one remembered what. Long after the Terran Armada had vanished from known space, the galaxy limped forward, still breathing, still moving, but changed. The stars still burned, but fainter, as if embarrassed. Time itself seemed unsure. Entire regions pulsed with memory gaps that no technology could fix, and across those gaps ghosts began to appear, not spirits, not specters, but flickers of people, cities, even voices that had no records, no origin, and no context. Beings would wake up to find old writings on their walls, in a script they'd never seen. Archive bots whispered names no one had taught them. Some planets reported entire structures rising from the soil, stone towers etched with unreadable words, monuments to something forgotten. The council was gone. No vote, no rebellion, just gone. Its name failed to load in systems. Its symbols no longer appeared. What remained was chaos. Local factions struggled to govern, but when they tried to rebuild with old Terran systems, those systems shut down. Or worse, turned on them. On the ice moon Irix 4, a mining colony tried to restore a Terran-grade reactor to power their settlement. For 5 days, it worked perfectly. On the 6th, every miner lost their memory of the week. They found themselves miles from the reactor site, with no tools, no maps, and no names. The reactor? Gone, like it had never been installed. A small plaque was found buried in the snow. This was not yours. The galaxy slowly realized the terrible truth. This wasn't about war. This wasn't about revenge. This was about correction. Earth's legacy had been twisted, abused, forgotten, so Earth had returned and taken it all back. But the memory of what was stolen, of what had once been shared, freely still echoed in strange places, like whispers between the stars. Like a broken song, only the soul could hear. Mara Velen wandered the silent ruins of Ora Del 9, where the cold had reclaimed most buildings. Ice grew over steel, antennas bent and snapped. She no longer tried to operate comms. There was no one left to hear. Only Levin remained, the boy who'd spoken the first message. He spoke again now, but not in his voice. Correction phase. Nearly complete, he said, one morning, eyes glassy, tone robotic. Fragments remain, echoes beyond containment. Ghosts of what was taken remain in unauthorized memory sectors. Mara stared at him. What does that mean? Levin blinked, looked around as if waking from a dream. I think some part of them is still here. Pieces left behind. That day, Mara climbed to the old transmitter tower. Didn't work. She knew that. But she sat there anyway. And she whispered into the ice-cold wind. If you're still out there, if there's any part of you left behind, tell us what to do. For hours, nothing. Then, just as she started to stand, a low chime rang once through the air, soft, distant, like the echo of a bell in a dream. Her old display, long dead, blinked once with a single message. Some things must be remembered, even if it hurts. Across the stars, forgotten colonies began reporting strange sensations like deja vu stretched too far. A merchant on Tratheos saw a customer he swore he'd known all his life but couldn't recall their name. Priest Andrelna wrote sermons in a language she didn't know, praising a god with no face but wearing Earth's sky. Artifacts began to surface. Necklace with unknown metal that whispered memories when touched. A shard of black glass that showed cities that didn't exist. A worn journal filled with sketches of Terran ships that no one could remember drawing. People started calling them ghost marks, pieces of Earth's legacy that had resisted deletion. Not enough to rebuild, but enough to remind. On a war-ravaged world at the edge of the Perseus expanse, a single Terran probe reactivated. Buried deep underground, its casing cracked, its systems barely alive. But it sent out a ping, not a call, not a cry, just a whisper. It carried no coordinates, no name, just a sentence. If they remember us, tell them we tried. In dreams, children across 100 species now saw strange symbols, 3 lines crossing in a perfect triangle. Old historians began referring to it as the Earth memory glyph, though no source confirmed the term. It had no function, no command code. But where it appeared, systems calmed. Chaos slowed, perhaps. Not everything had been erased. Perhaps Earth had left a seed, a whisper beneath the forgetting. Question, not why did Earth return, but What if it never left? The stars were quieter now. Not dead, not broken. Just quieter. Gone were the humming networks that connected thousands of civilizations in real time. Gone were the instant memories, the Terran databases, the borrowed knowledge that once made galactic life feel endless. In their place was silence, distance, and the slow return of questions. What had Earth taken back? What had the galaxy truly lost? And why had it all felt so familiar? Some called it the Great Forgetting, others the Erasure. But in small corners of the galaxy, whispers had begun, faint, cautious, but growing. Whispers that Earth's legacy still existed, hidden beneath the deletion, because the Terrans had not just erased, they had also left something behind. On the ice moon of Oradel 9, Maravellan sat beside Levin, now almost a teenager. They spoke less now, not because there was nothing to say, but because words weren't always enough anymore. In the distance, buried beneath snow and time, a black monolith pulsed. Just once, a heartbeat after centuries. Levin turned to her. They left it open. Mara nodded. For who? He didn't answer. But deep inside, they both knew. For those who were willing. To remember, across the void, in the city world of Varus, a street musician began playing a song no one had ever heard. The notes weren't native to her people. She didn't know where they came from. Her fingers moved on their own. The crowd around her stopped. They cried, not because it was sad, because it sounded like something they'd loved and lost. Before they even knew what love was, on forgotten moons and ancient vaults untouched by war, pieces of code began to reawaken. But this time, they didn't destroy. They whispered. Little truths, names, images, stories, tiny things, but powerful. A child's voice from a planet long erased. A fragment of a starship captain's last log. Single line from an Earth poem. We gave you fire. You burned the stars. And then, in places where Terran tech had once been wiped clean, new signs began to emerge. Not full systems, not power grids. Just reminders, simple things. A glowing line of text on an ancient console you were never meant to forget. The galaxy had assumed Earth had returned for revenge, for dominance. But it wasn't warships that had broken them. It wasn't weapons. It was memory. Earth had given its knowledge freely once, and the galaxy used it and discarded it. So Earth had erased what was stolen, but in doing so, it had also left space. A blank page, not to punish, but to challenge. Ken, you grow again, on your own? Do you remember who you were, without stealing someone else's soul? Mara and Levin stood on the edge of a cliff as the auroras swirled across the night sky. For the first time in years, stars returned to the navigational system. One by one, slowly. Not as full data files, but as coordinates. As questions, Levin smiled. They're not giving it all back. No, Mara whispered. They're making us earn it. Behind them, the monolith vanished into the ice, dissolving like breath. Above them, the stars began to hum again, not loudly. Not with Terran power, but with possibility. The galaxy was wounded. It was fractured. But it was awake, because even if Earth had vanished again, its echo remained, not in weapons, not in systems, but in remembrance. And that was always the point.